This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
I read this in the news last week, that deaths from selfies are more common than death by shark attack, by a lot. Over a 13-year period, there were 90 shark-related deaths and 379 selfie-related deaths. So many that some popular tourist sites have considered banning selfies. Some cities have banned selfies in certain congested areas to keep foot traffic moving and not block sidewalks and streets, and some cities have fines related to selfies. I find this interesting, and maybe you do too, because this is one place where technology and real life intersect and is something that we would not necessarily have foreseen as a problem. On the other hand, there cannot be a parent alive who thought it would be no big deal to have smartphones in schools. It's bothered me for years that my kids' school didn't seem to have a policy about phones. They started with this concept that students need to learn to regulate themselves. I mean, I'm an adult with a fully formed frontal lobe, and I'm relatively busy with other stuff in my life to distract me, yet I still have trouble regulating my use of apps and social media and the constant access I have to my email and texts. This year, there seems to be a really big uptick in smartphone policies at schools. One school in my town, they're locking students' phones in pouches during the school day. And unlike that recent episode I did on school lockdown drills, there actually is not a lot of evidence to guide how kids access and use their phones in school. So that's the question I have today. What effects do phones have on kids in the school setting? How bad is social media, and what can parents do? I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the pediatrician next door. I'm that doctor friend you call for practical advice about your kids' health. I mix the science of medicine with the reality of parenting. Someone told me last week that they read an article that suggested that this generation's use of phones for communication may cause the next leap in human evolution. You know, kids are always looking down at their phone, texting instead of talking, ordering food online instead of actually calling the restaurant or ordering in person. I couldn't find this actual article to assess it, but I can imagine there may be some truth to the impact that this ubiquitous technology is having on this generation. I can't see how it wouldn't permanently change us. I mean, we have immediate access to the answers to every question, and it's way easier to meet up with someone and not have to wait and find them like we used to. We don't even have to be patient anymore. It's just not a skill we need. The other two issues that catch my attention in this highly digital age is, first, the reliability and truth of the information that school-age students read online, and second, the effects that comparing themselves to things they see on social media has on their mental health. I know you've thought about this because it's all over the popular media really often, and social media is definitely taking some or most of the blame for our teen mental health crisis. But is it really to blame? I'll get to that in a little bit. First, I want to bring your attention to something that wasn't really on my radar, and that is the susceptibility that kids have to fake news. We know a lot about this. Not only do they have to navigate the usual teenage drama, but they also have to dodge a constant barrage of conspiracy theories that would make even the most savvy adult confused. According to a 2021 study in the British Journal of Developmental Psychology, the age of 14 is when the average teen starts to believe in unproven conspiracies that they hear or read. So just when you thought your teenager was at the age to know better, it turns out they're primed to believe the latest conspiracy theory about, say, Bigfoot running for president. I mean, I wish. But anyway, many teens have a hard time figuring out what is legitimate online. In a 2016 study done at Stanford, researchers found that 80% of middle schoolers thought an advertisement that was labeled as sponsored content was actually a true news story. Yeah, ads and news are almost the same thing in a teenager's mind. And if you're thinking high schoolers have to be smarter, think again. Less than 20% of them questioned sketchy claims on social media, like a Facebook post that showed mutated flowers that were supposedly proof that radiation was still all over near a Japanese nuclear accident site. Spoiler alert, those flowers were just weird looking. They weren't from a radiation meltdown. Even college students who should be on the verge of adulting, they're not immune. When they were shown a Twitter post about a poll supporting gun control, more than 2/3 of the students did not notice that the poll was made by anti-gun groups, which obviously could skew the results. It seems that even higher education can't save us from the perils of clickbait. And as if things weren't hard enough, there's YouTube. Every teen's go-to for everything from cat videos to conspiracy theories. A study in the Wall Street Journal found that YouTube's recommendation algorithm has a sneaky way of leading users down a rabbit hole of increasingly extreme content. So you start by looking up something innocent like lunar eclipse. And before you know it, you're watching a video claiming the Earth is flat. Yeah, that's right. YouTube might just be the most efficient radicalizing tool of the 21st century, according to Zeynep Tufekci, an associate professor from UNC Chapel Hill. That's my alma mater. So the next time you catch your kids explaining a wild news story, ask them, who's been teaching you that? The internet or a flat earther with a YouTube channel? So that brings me to social media. How bad is it for kids? Of course, the answer is, it depends. Here to explain the current understanding about kids, social media, and cell phones is the author of the newsletter TechnoSapiens.
I'm Jacqueline Nisi. I am a clinical psychologist and an assistant professor at Brown University and author of the newsletter TechnoSapiens. And I study the role of digital technology like smartphones and social media in adolescents and young people's mental health and development and what parents can do to help. I think a lot of us would think, based on what we hear, that the story is very simple. Smartphones and social media are bad for mental health, full stop. But what we know from the research is that it's actually more complicated than that. The research would suggest that the effect of smartphones and social media really depends on how they're being used. There are both risks and benefits, and depending on how students are using these technologies, that will, of course, play a role in how it affects them. We also know that all students are not affected the same way. So some young people, their use of smartphones and social media will have a more negative effect than others, and it really depends on the person in question. The other thing we know is that mental health is really complex. So there are a lot of different factors that go into a young person's mental health beyond just smartphones. And it's never going to be the case that, say, social media is the only cause of mental health concerns. And so I think it's important for us to be keeping in mind that these effects are really nuanced. It depends on a lot of different things, on who students are, how they're using the technology, and all the other factors that are happening and going on in their lives and in their schools.
Well, that's not very helpful, is it? Social media is really broad. You've got the kid who watches videos that teach them a new crafting skill. That's great. And then teens who post a photo of themselves and then obsessively check their like count. The only way to find out how your kids are doing with social media is to ask them. And ask with curiosity, not criticism. Show them what you do on social media. Talk to them about how you get sucked in yourself sometimes. Or share that you choose not to be on social media. And of course, set boundaries about what age they can be on social media. The nonprofit group Common Sense Media published a summary of research done on the use of smartphones called Constant Companion. One of the most interesting things in the report was not the insane number of times our students pick up their phones and check them. It was actually the number of notifications they get. Half of the students they surveyed received more than 237 notifications a day. So this is one action you can take. Ask your kids about their notifications and tell them to turn them off. And while you're at it, do the same for your phone. Wait, hold on a sec. Which brings me to what might be a bigger deal, and that is the effect that smartphone use is having on the rest of their life, like schoolwork. Nearly 1 in 3 kids deal with constipation and pooping problems. Their little guts are overwhelmed by factors like poor diets and antibiotic overuse. One of the best ways to help support digestion and their immune system is by adding prebiotics to their daily routine. Did you know that 70 to 80% of our immune cells live in the gut? A happy gut means a healthy kid, and prebiotics help feed and increase good gut bacteria in your kiddo's microbiome. In partnership with nutrition scientists and pediatricians, Begin Health created daily growing up prebiotics. It's the perfect prebiotic with 3 grams of fiber in every serving to support smoother and softer number 2s, so potty time is smoother for the whole family. My patients tell me they love this tasteless and textureless powder because it mixes into their kids' favorite drink or food, making it easy to give to even picky eaters. Visit beginhealth.com today and get 25% off your order with my promo code NEXTDOOR, NEXTDOOR. Predictable potty time and the perfect poop is possible with Begin Health Daily Growing Up Prebiotics. What effect is smartphone use having on kids? Here's Dr. Nisi.
We have some good evidence around how smartphones impact behavior, academic performance, socialization, and a lot of it is in line with, I think, what we would expect. So we know that smartphones can be distracting. They can distract from attention in class. They can also distract from socialization, so talking to the people around us, which in turn can impact mood. We know that those things can have an effect and that smartphones can play that role. We actually do have studies that look at when students are randomly assigned to either have their phones with them or not during class periods, that those who do have phones with them tend to show worse attention, worse memory for what's covered in the class. So we do have some evidence that when phones are present and available, that they can be distracting. There are a couple studies that look specifically at phone bans and basically what happens when schools implement policies around limiting students' phone use. Those studies vary a lot in terms of what they consider a phone ban. So in some of those studies, it's phones are turned off and put away for the entire school day. Some of those studies are looking at just, students aren't allowed to use their phones for non-academic purposes in the classroom. But we do have some evidence from those studies that would suggest small effects on academic achievement, which includes test scores.
She goes on to explain that schools are using a variety of different policies for trying to regulate phone use during the school day. And the primary thing she sees that is lacking is support of the teachers to enforce these policies. Just ask your kid. There's a complete disconnect between the school's stated policy and what the teachers can actually enforce. As I said earlier, some schools have taken to making students store their phones in locked pouches all day that they can't access until the end of the day, and other schools use an honor system. Finally, a few states have passed laws banning or restricting phone use in schools. Florida was the first last year. The problem is there is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Phones are a part of everyday life. Students use them for appropriate tasks sometimes, like calculators or to play music to help them stay focused. I need mine to store all of my passwords. And parents are concerned about this issue as well.
A lot of parents actually are wanting the convenience of getting in touch with their children sometime during the school day, or maybe they're concerned about emergencies that might take place during the school day. lockdowns, that kind of thing at school, and they want to be able to get in touch with their child just in case. So certainly parents have concerns about total phone bans. I think what that speaks to, though, is just the importance of when school districts and schools themselves are thinking about these policies, making sure that all stakeholders are kind of on board. And that means parents too, making sure that the policies are communicated well and that they're addressing some of parents' concerns about these issues. We don't have a ton of data on students' perspectives on this, which I think is very telling, that we generally, I think, could do a better job of speaking to students in terms of what they think about these policies and how best to implement them, since they're the ones who this is really going to affect. But what we do know is that students have differing opinions on them. So there are certainly some students who say that these policies are great, that they like having the opportunity to have some time during the day that's, focused more on their learning or focused more just on socializing, that it changes the culture in the school, which they like. But then, of course, there are students who don't like these policies and feel like they're inconvenient or they're unfair or they're somehow taking away from their experience. So I think it's a mixed bag.
So we are most likely headed toward more laws and policy dictating the use of phones in school. But we also need to engage parents and students in how these new policies are rolled out. Even if there are laws, kids will still pull out their phones at school. And so a better option may be to lean in and educate about this digital jungle. It's called media literacy education, and it can be really effective. Digital devices and social media aren't going away, so maybe we need to learn how to use them as a tool and to have the self-control to use them so that it benefits us rather than is distracting. But here's the kicker. Very few kids in the United States are getting this kind of education. Last year, Illinois became the first state to require all high school students to take a media literacy class. 13 other states have some kind of law on the books, but these can be as vague as a list of resources on a website. That's it. Howard Schneider from Stony Brook University, who's been teaching news literacy for years, says that by the time students get to college, it's too late. They've already picked up some pretty bad habits when it comes to their phones. Even if more kids were taught media literacy, there's still a big debate about what exactly they should be learning. Some programs focus on teaching students to find trustworthy journalistic sources, but critics say that this approach overlooks the fact that even good news outlets can be biased. Well, that's obvious. Other programs encourage students to dig deeper and ask questions like, who wrote this content? What's their agenda? But here's the problem. There's not a ton of data showing which method works best. It's like trying to choose between two different diets when neither has been fully tested. So should you go low carb or vegan? Researchers like Sam Weinberg at Stanford are researching these questions as well. In a 2019 study, his team found that college students and even history professors were often duped by sketchy websites, while people who are professional fact checkers were better at sorting the truth from fiction. What was their secret? They didn't just stay on one website. They opened up new tabs, did quick searches, and they compared multiple sources, something that Weinberg now teaches in his classes. Some educators, though, they worry that teaching students to be too skeptical could backfire. Instead of making them good news consumers, it might turn them into cynics who think everyone's lying all the time. This concern was echoed by technology scholar Dana Boyd, who warns that pushing kids to question everything can lead them down some pretty dark paths when they start believing in bizarre alternative explanations for just about everything. So what's the solution? An expert from Emerson College suggests that we need to help students get comfortable with uncertainty. It's about moving them beyond black and white thinking to understanding that the world is actually a messy place, and that's okay. But this kind of nuanced thinking isn't easy to teach, especially when schools are already struggling just to cover the basics. There's also a big gap in who gets this education. Kids in wealthier school districts are more likely to receive media literacy training, while those in lower income areas often miss out. And with teachers already overwhelmed by their current workloads, adding something as complex as media literacy is not simple. There's some hope on the horizon, though. In 2019, Senator Amy Klobuchar introduced a bill that would fund media literacy programs in schools across the country. If it passes, it could help ensure that more kids learn how to navigate today's chaotic information landscape. But even with more funding, we still need a lot more research to figure out what works. As one of the researchers explained, we're in the middle of the most profound information revolution in 500 years, and we need to take some big steps to keep moving forward. How can you keep up? You heard from Jacqueline Nisi that you can subscribe to her newsletter, TechnoSapiens, to keep up on the latest research on technology and how people use it, as well as practical tips for parenting in the digital age. I also recommend Common Sense Media's parenting tip videos. A lot of them are helpful to watch with your kids. I'm going to put these links in the show notes. Common Sense Media is your go-to for checking whether a game, movie, or TV show is beneficial or is not so good for kids. I also highly recommend a site called the Achievery. That site has interactive lessons with things like the consequence of posting on social media. And of course, Google has a complete curriculum called Be Internet Awesome. This one's really good. It has lessons that are taught through an adventure-packed online game called Interland. And I'm going to wrap this up by acknowledging the irony of me recommending online resources to teach about online life. If you're struggling with your child over their screen time, go back and listen to episode 23. It's called Screen Time Solutions. Listen to it with your kid, and maybe you can end your arguing and find out which of you is actually right. If you learned something by listening to this show, please leave me a rating and review on Apple Podcasts so I can be more popular on social media and feel better about myself. Actually, I just need the reviews so I can expand the show. I'd really appreciate your support. For more from the Pediatrician Next Door, find me on the web at pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com. If you've got a question about the weird things kids do, send an email to hello@pediatriciannextdoorpodcast.com for a chance to hear your voice on the show. I'm Dr. Wendy Hunter, and I'm the Pediatrician Next Door. This show is produced by Red Rock Music. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever it is you're listening. I'll be back next time with more.